This is a demo for lockable shelled windows. Client 1 is Alice. Alice is the master of the lock. Client 2 is Bob. Bob is a slave. Client 3 is Kathy. Kathy is also a slave. Now Kathy wants to request the lock. This is Alice's console. Alice received the grant request, grant the lock as the master, and send the grant status to all clients. And Alice is also a slave, so Alice received the grant made as a slave and lock granted. This is Bob's console. Bob received the grant made and locked granted as a slave. Kathy request the grant and send request. Then Kathy received the grant made and found that this is his own lock grant made, lock granted. This if Alice wants to do something here, it will be declined because of the user action declined. Alice didn't get the lock. And if Bob wants to enter or mouse down or key down, Bob cannot do anything because Bob also do not have the lock, but Kathy can. Kathy can enter the topic or send the message. And show the turning pointer, change the size, width, height, move the turning pointer, set the thrust, and there will be some delays. Now if Alice wants to get the lock, Alice send a request, and Kathy get a message that Alice requests your lock, but she will not release it automatically. She should press the release button to release the lock. Now Kathy can request the lock now. Well, Alice can request the lock. Alice get a lock. Alice can move the turning pointer, enter something. Change the size. But Alice do not want to release the lock by press the button. She can check the timeout unlock. And then 3 seconds later, the lock is released automatically because it's timeout. Now Bob can request the lock implicitly. That is, by enter something here, we'll press the button, press the mouse. Bob get the lock now. And release the lock. Alice can also request a preemptive unlock. Now, if Bob wants to request the lock, Kathy has to release the lock because it's preemptive unlock. Now Bob can make the lock as timeout unlock and preemptive unlock. If Kathy sends a request, Bob will not release because it's not timeout. But now, 10 seconds later, it's timeout, so Cassie can request again. Now Bob releases the block and Cassie gets a lock. If Cassie uses the timeout and the preemptive unlock, it's timeout because 10 seconds later. But if Cassie enters something here, it becomes timeout false, and Bob cannot request the lock, but Cassie will not release it automatically. It's not timeout. Ten seconds later, it's timeout. Alice can request the lock again. Although, it's automatically released because it's a timeout unlock. I think that's all. You can change the lock's type anytime you want. That's all.
Alice, Bob, and Kathy. Alice is the master of the lock, so Alice will have a lock model and a lock cache, but Bob and Kathy only own the lock cache. Now we net Kathy to request a lock from Kathy. This is Alice's console. Alice received the grant request from Kathy, and Alice grant the lock to Kathy. Alice grant status sent to all clients. Alice also, as a slave, received the grant and found its grant to Kathy. This is Kathy's console. Kathy made the grant request, sent the grant request, and received the grant from Alice. And Kathy found out that this is Kathy's lock, and it's her own lock, so there is a slave my lock grant made received, and made the grant to Kathy in his own cache. This is Bob's console. Bob received the lock grant from Alice and found its grant to Kathy and revised the lock cache. Now we net Bob to send a request. It's Bob's lock. Send a request. Okay, Kathy found Bob's request her lock. So Bob made the request. Sorry, it's Bob's console. Bob made the request, sent the request, and Alice received the request but delayed the request to Bob. This is Kathy's console. Kathy found there is a lock grant to request her lock. So now Kathy can choose to release the lock. After Kathy released the lock, Alice received the release request from Kathy and found it's Kathy's lock and released it. Send release status to all, and Alice also as a slave received the release and released the lock for Kathy. This is Bob's console. Bob received the release from Alice and released the lock for Kathy. This is Kathy's console. Kathy made the release request, sent the release request, and received the release from Alice because Alice passed Kathy's release request, and Kathy released the lock for Kathy. That's all. Thank you.
This is a demo for lockable shelled models. Alice is the master, and Kathy and Bob are slaves. Now Kathy requests a lock. If Alice wants to enter the message, there will be no reaction. So it's Bob. And if Kathy enters something here, everyone will receive the message. Now Bob wants to get the lock. Request. Kathy get a message. Bob is request your lock. Now Kathy can choose to press the release button to release the lock, and Kathy cannot enter anything here. Everyone cannot enter the thing. Bob can request the lock. He can request a timeout lock. For 10 seconds, it's a timeout lock. Okay, 10 times later, Bob released the lock automatically. Now Kathy can request a lock as a preemptive unlock. This is Alice's lock. If Kathy requests, Kathy can choose to use the implicit lock. So if Kathy mouse down, enter something, Kathy is request your lock. And the lock holder becomes Kathy. And Kathy can change the lock to timeout and preemptive unlock. Now it's timeout. Timeout is true. That timeout is true. And Bob can request the lock. It's timeout. Kathy requests timeout and preemptive lock. It's timeout. But if Alice enters something, it's timeout is false. Okay, we should send it larger. Set the time larger. It's not timeout. Timeout false. And if Bob requests, Alice will not release the lock automatically because the time is not out. Now, 10 seconds later, it's time out. Bob can request again, and the request is passed.